There are moments when a royal drama stops being just a headline and becomes something closer to a collapse in slow motion, when the fall of a once powerful figure unfolds in real time and exposes not only the fragility of privilege, but the emotional turmoil behind palace walls. And today that moment surrounds Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, a man once known around the world as Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, now stripped of every title, every honor, and soon, even the home he has clung to for more than 20 years. As he prepares to leave the royal lodge and face a future he never imagined, questions are swirling about his finances, his emotional state, and the sheer scale of his downfall. And in the shadows of Windsor, where silence hangs over the long driveway leading to his estate, there is a sense that a chapter is closing, and not gently. Before we dive in, there's something I need to share with you. Over the past few days, thousands have watched these stories unfold, but most haven't subscribed. If you're one of them, I invite you now to join us. Subscribe to Crownverse so you never miss the next chapter in this unfolding royal history. For more than 2 decades, Andrew lived at the Royal Lodge, a sprawling 30-room mansion in Great Windsor Park, surrounded by manicured gardens, private stables, and a history that once symbolized his closeness to the heart of the monarchy. It was the beloved home of the Queen Mother, later granted to Andrew under a long-term lease. But now that same home has become the scene of his public humiliation. After losing his military titles, losing his patronages, and losing the right to call himself a prince, he is now losing the one physical space that anchored him to his old life. And the internal pressure building behind this eviction tells a story far deeper than logistics. It speaks to a monarchy in transition, a king determined to distance the crown from scandal, and a man whose name has become a liability. Andrew's downfall, of course, is tied to an association that shook the monarchy to its core, his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The controversies that followed that relationship triggered a chain of events that the palace has been trying to manage ever since. In 2020, as public anger surged, Andrew withdrew from all royal duties. In 2022, the late Queen removed his honorary military roles and charitable positions. In 2025, King Charles went further, stripping him of the Duke of York and the style of prince. By October of that year, he was officially known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. For the first time in his life, he stood before the world as a private citizen. But behind the titles and the palace announcements lies a practical question that has intrigued reporters and critics for years. How does Andrew support himself? He has not earned a public income in more than a decade. The last known public figure dates back to 2010, when he received £249,000 per year for carrying out royal duties. After stepping back in 2020, that ended. For years before her passing, the late Queen reportedly supported him financially through her private fortune. But with her gone, and Charles running the monarchy with a more austere hand, there is no longer a convenient financial cushion. Celebrity Net Worth estimates Andrew's personal wealth at around £3.7 million. This figure, often cited in media, is not an official palace document, but rather an external estimate based on available information. It paints a picture of a man far from destitute, but nowhere near rich enough to maintain a mansion like the Royal Lodge, with its extensive upkeep, staff, and running costs. Some reports, including a 2023 investigation by The Guardian, claimed that Andrew earned roughly £13 million from various royal roles and associated opportunities before 2019. That number, too, is not an official figure, but it suggests he once had access to significant financial pathways that are now closed. His current life, according to insiders quoted in various reports, is marked by uncertainty. One royal expert noted that Andrew expects to retain some staff even after leaving Royal Lodge, but where he will house them or how he will pay them is unclear. Another commentator, former BBC royal correspondent Jenny Bond, said Andrew is living in fear and angry, feeling cornered by events he can no longer control. These statements reflect reported impressions of his emotional state, not confirmed quotes from Andrew himself. Yet they align with a narrative that has followed him since his public disappearance, a man isolated, powerless, and deeply unsettled. In 2024, The Times reported that Andrew had assured palace officials he possessed sufficient legitimate funds to continue covering his Royal Lodge expenses. That claim, while published, has never been officially verified. What is known is that the Crown estate grew increasingly skeptical of his ability to maintain the property. By 2025, the king had decided it was time for Andrew to leave, to downsize, and to remove himself from the symbolic heart of the royal grounds. It was not simply a financial decision, it was a reputational one. When the king ordered the eviction, he was not acting spontaneously. He was carrying out a broader plan to streamline the monarchy and remove unnecessary risks. Andrew, stripped of every public role, was one of the most significant risks of all. The palace could no longer justify allocating prime royal property to someone who no longer served the crown. And with Charles determined to reshape the monarchy for the decades ahead, Andrew's continued residence at Royal Lodge became incompatible with the king's vision. The decision to relocate Andrew to Sandringham reflects both practicality and symbolism. Sandringham is large, secluded, and secure, an ideal location for someone the palace wants to keep out of constant public view. But it is also far removed from the center of royal power. For Andrew, who once stood next in line after his elder brother and father, this move reads as a demotion into near exile. Reports suggest he will be moved early in the near year, though the exact date remains unclear. Public sightings of Andrew have grown rare. The last recorded appearance took place on November 17th, when he was seen riding on horseback through the Windsor estate, having been absent from view for weeks. The sight raised more questions than answers. Was he riding to clear his mind? Was he trying to maintain a sense of normalcy? Was he avoiding the public because of shame, or because palace advisors told him to avoid visibility? No one knows. But the image of him on horseback, alone, silent, navigating the wooded trails of Windsor, created its own kind of symbolism, a former prince lingering in the shadows of a world that no longer welcomes him. Family dynamics also complicate this moment. Andrew's daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, have long stood by their father. They have always considered him a devoted parent. But even they cannot shield him from the consequences of his past associations or the decisions of the king. Reports stating that Eugenie offered him temporary accommodation in Portugal are unverified, while claims that Beatrice's renovated cottage might serve as a temporary base are based on speculation. What is clear is that both daughters maintain deep affection for him, and the palace knows that any action involving Andrew must be sensitive to the impact on them. But affection alone cannot halt the king's strategy. Emotionally, Andrew appears to be in a fragile state. Multiple commentators have said he is angry at the palace, angry at the king, and angry at the life that has unraveled around him. Others say he is fearful, uncertain about his future, consumed by the loss of identity that once defined him.
These emotional descriptors are based on outside analysis, not direct statements from Andrew. Still, they paint a portrait of a man grieving the end of an era he never expected to lose. The looming move to Sandringham raises deeper questions about his net worth and lifestyle. How will he support himself? Will he continue relying on private funds inherited from the Queen? Will the king offer limited support, discreetly, to avoid the appearance of abandonment? Or will Andrew, stripped of royal roles and financial pipelines, need to restructure his entire life? These questions are now the center of speculation surrounding him. The Royal Lodge itself will soon undergo change. Reports suggest it may be reassigned to working royals or reabsorbed into the Crown estate. For decades, it was a symbol of continuity, a reminder of the Queen Mother's legacy, and a sign of Andrew's privileged position. Losing it marks the final stage in a process that began with a single TV interview many years ago, spiraled into global controversy, and has now ended in near complete erasure from royal life. Andrew's future remains uncertain. His finances are ambiguous. His emotional stability is a matter of debate. And his place within the royal family is now almost entirely ceremonial, if not symbolic. His story has become a lesson in how quickly status can fall, how swiftly the monarchy acts when survival is at stake, and how isolating disgrace can be when the palace door closes. What is certain is that he will leave Royal Lodge soon. The date may not be public yet, but the decision has been made. For the first time in his life, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor will walk out of a royal home not as a prince, not as a duke, not as a senior royal, but as a private man, carrying with him the weight of scandal, the burden of public judgment, and the uncertainty of a future far from the world he once inhabited with ease.